40,000 years ago, a scratch on your hand could kill you. And the cure was already sitting in your cave if you were smart enough to chew it. Picture him, a Homo sapiens hunter, maybe 25, curled against the cold stone of a cave somewhere in what we now call Europe. He's drenched in sweat, but shaking like it's the dead of winter. His skin burns, his thoughts smear together. He has no word for infection, no idea that something too small to see is multiplying inside him. All he knows is that yesterday he was strong, and today his own body has turned into a stranger trying to kill him. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. He might survive this. Not because of luck, because of something his people figured out in the dark. A remedy so clever that a version of it is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now, tonight, within arm's reach. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll know exactly which bottle it is, and you'll never look at it the same way again. So start with the impossible question. These people had no doctors, no hospitals, no idea that germs existed, no antibiotics, no thermometers, no pharmacy on the corner. By every rule we understand about medicine, a single bad illness should have torn through the band and left the cave silent. So why didn't it? Why are we here at all? The answer is stranger and far smarter than they just got tough, and it starts with how differently a sick day meant back then. Think about your last one. You pull the blanket up, someone brings soup. You send a text to your boss, not coming in, and the worst part of your day is boredom. Being sick for you is an inconvenience, a pause button on a life that will obviously resume. For them, there was no pause button. A body too weak to hunt was a body that produced nothing while still needing to eat. A body that couldn't walk was a body the group might have to leave behind when the herd moved on. Illness wasn't a break from survival. It was the exact moment survival could end, for the sick person, and sometimes for everyone touching them. And the dangers were not abstract. Let me make you feel them. Imagine a cut on the hand from butchering a carcass. Nothing, a scratch. But 2 days later, the edges go red and hot and swollen, and a red line begins crawling up the arm toward the heart. That's infection. With no antibiotics, that scratch can become sepsis, and sepsis can kill a healthy adult in a matter of days. There's nothing to do but watch it climb. Now imagine fever with diarrhea. The body pours out water it can't replace, and a dehydrated body in a cold climate simply stops recovering. The person shrinks, the eyes sink, the pulse races and thins. And here's the cruelest part. The sick person, sweating and coughing in a shared shelter, can pass whatever it is to the very people caring for them. One illness becomes many. One death becomes a funeral for half the band. They couldn't see the enemy. Not the bacteria, not the virus, not the parasite in the water. So they did what humans always do with an invisible attacker. They gave it a face, a curse, an angry spirit, the displeasure of the dead. When you can't see what's hunting you, you invent a hunter you can at least try to bargain with. So what did they actually do, hour by hour, when someone went down? This is where it gets astonishing, because they didn't just pray. They worked. They dragged the sick person close to the fire and kept that fire alive through the night, feeding it so the warmth never dropped. They hauled water. They chewed food soft for mouths too weak to chew, the way a bird feeds a chick. Someone stayed awake while others slept, and they did the single most radical thing in the whole story. They stayed. They did not leave the useless one behind. We know this because the bones tell us. In Shanidar Cave, in the mountains of what's now Iraq, archaeologists found a Neanderthal we call Shanidar I, the old man. This individual survived a crushing blow to the head that likely blinded one eye. He had a withered arm, probably useless, possibly amputated. He had damage to his legs that would have made every step a limp of pain. And he lived like that for years, injured, half-blind, unable to hunt or run. And he did not die of it, because the others fed him, moved him, and protected him. That is not survival of the fittest. That is care. That is the first medicine, and it is older than our own species. Sit with that for a second, because it flips everything. Caring for the sick wasn't weakness that evolution should have punished. It was a technology. It was the thing that let a person survive the 2 weeks a fever needed to break. But care alone doesn't fight infection. And this is where our ancestors did something that still makes scientists sit up. They built, by trial and deadly error, the first pharmacy on Earth. They watched. They noticed which plants a sick animal chewed and then recovered. They noticed which bitter leaf calmed a churning gut, which bark dulled a pain, which one made things worse, and they remembered, and they told each other. Every remedy was a bet with a life on the table. Get it right, and the fever eases. Get it wrong, and you've poisoned someone already dying. We're not guessing about this. At a site called El Sidrón in northern Spain, researchers scraped the hardened plaque off Neanderthal teeth, the tartar that fossilizes and traps microscopic scraps of everything that pass through the mouth. And locked inside it, they found yarrow and chamomile. Now those are bitter plants with almost no food value. You don't eat them because they're delicious. There's a much simpler reason to swallow something bitter and useless. You're taking it as medicine. And then comes the twist that should genuinely raise the hair on your arms. On the teeth of one sick young Neanderthal, a man suffering from a painful dental abscess and a gut parasite, they found traces of poplar. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid. That is the natural parent compound of the aspirin in your bathroom cabinet. The same chemistry. A suffering human, 40,000 years ago, in the dark, chewing the raw source of the exact painkiller you'd reach for tonight. It goes further. That same man's plaque held traces of penicillium, the mold that produces penicillin, the world's first antibiotic, which we credit Alexander Fleming with discovering in 1928. A sick Neanderthal was swallowing its natural source 40,000 years before Fleming ever saw a petri dish. Not because he understood microbiology, because something in his people's hard-won memory said, this helps. And out of all that pressure, something even deeper grew, not just medicine, but meaning. Someone in the band became the one who knew the plants, who knew the chants, who sat with the dying, part botanist, part comforter, keeper of what works, the first healer. And here's a truth modern science has finally caught up to. The comfort itself was medicine. Chants, the smell of smoke, red ochre smeared on the skin, a hand held in the dark, these lowered the terror. And terror, the racing pulse and the sleepless dread, wears a sick body down. Belief bought the time the body needed to heal itself. At Shanidar, the old man and others were buried with intention, laid down with red ochre, with care, in ground chosen for them. These people marked their dead, grief and healing braided together into the first ceremonies. Out of sickness came ritual. Out of dying came the first human idea that a life was worth remembering. So fold it all back onto you. Every pill you trust, every remedy in your cabinet began as someone in a cave betting their own life on a leaf and living or dying by the answer. But the real invention wasn't the willow bark or the poplar or the mold. The real invention was stranger and softer than any drug. It was the decision to care for the one who couldn't repay it. To keep alive the blind old man who would never hunt again. To bring warmth and water to a body that gave the group nothing back. That instinct, the one that makes you carry soup to a sick friend's door, the one that feels like the most ordinary thing in the world, is not ordinary at all. It is the oldest human technology you own, and you inherited it from people who invented it in the dark. So the next time a single pill kills your fever in an hour, remember the hunter shaking on the cold stone. Someone like him figured out the first half of that cure, blind, terrified, fighting a curse he could never see. He had no idea he was right. Now here's my question for you. With nothing but the plants around you and everything on the line, what would you have chewed, and who would you have trusted to hold your hand while you did?